We're in. We're here. You guys gonna say anything? I'm joined by Dom and Vibe and Aurora, but he's
Hello,
being
hello
quiet.
everybody watching at home. Folks, this is going to be a great stream.
This is gonna be a fantastic stream. Hope everyone's excited.
Hello, everybody. Nice to hear you all. Nice to see you all here tonight, and it's going to be great to see these results. Obviously, voting is a very important part of our democracy, and it is going to be very exciting to see whose vision for the future Canadians choose.
I hope everybody is
I've ever
sufficient.
been on TV.
I hope everybody is sufficiently playing their drinking games and is alcoholed up for this.
Okay,
I know I sure am.
let's not waste any time. We'll get right into it. So we'll start taking a look at our map here that we'll have throughout the night.
Are you sure the audio is working?
I think it's working.
It is.
Okay,
Great. So that's the map.
excellent.
At the bottom you'll have the seat counts with the little gray strip. That is where you'll see the riding name. Then you'll see the votes in actual numbers right underneath that. And then on the screen in like the blank part, that's where the percentages will be. Okay.
I think this will be an interesting result. All parties seem to have put up a fierce campaign, and it'll be interesting to see what the people go with, if they'll continue with the plan that has been working for 4 years, or if they'll want to throw it all out.
Well, we'll find out, I guess. Alright, so let's
We
take
sure
a look.
will.
Let's start by taking a look at our current standings in Parliament. Conservatives have 14, the LDA has 8, Peace and Order has 1, and there's 1 independent who is Red Wolf, so technically the LDA have 9.
Truly a beautiful sight, if I do say so myself.
Clearly the Tories have a huge majority at the moment, and we'll see if that changes tonight, or if they increase it.
I believe the people of Canada have seen the good we've done, and will keep us around.
We'll see. Alright, so and then our most recent poll, which was on day 7 of the campaign, showed a result that looks something like this, with the Conservatives on 41%, the LDA at 38%, Reason at 14%, and Peace and Order at 7%. Alright, so I'm interested to see how that will translate into the votes and into the seats.
I'm just curious to see if there's a shy Tory factor that will exist,
Might
if we'll
have-
outperform these polls.
Alright, so what are we starting off with tonight? Tonight we are starting off with the Atlantic. Polls closed early in the Atlantic because of, time zones. So our candidates were Connor Centercoast, Phonexia, who's the leader of the NDP. And then
Leader of the Alliance.
the
not
Alliance. Okay.
Yep.
And then Answer Me Now 1, who is of the Reason Party. So the results are as follows. Centercoast is elected in the Atlantic, 42.5% of the vote. Phonexia gets 34%, and Answer Me Now gets 22%. So, what can we make of this from the last poll? I think in the last poll it was a little closer than this, than what we ended up with.
So perhaps we are outperforming, as we've seen across provincial elections in the last couple of years. There might be a trend here.
It's possible. We could see how that translates into the rest of the night.
It's also significant to see that the leader of the opposition has failed to win the seat from the incumbent. I think Connor's maverick persona of doing private members' bills in favor of his riding has helped him here.
I agree. I think it was a strong campaign from everyone, but definitely his record would have put him over the top there. Alright, and we'll quickly move on to Montreal because that riding was acclaimed, so we don't really need to spend a lot of time on it. Claudia McFrost wins that riding, of course. So that's
Wow, who saw that coming?
it's 2 for the CPC already, and we've only just begun.
Huh, nice one.
Very tight race there.
This just in, I'm hearing reports of a recount being issued for Montreal.
Alright, so then let's move on to Quebec St. Laurent. We have Mr. Sura Vibe with 39.2% of the vote taking the seat. Kaiser is 30.7%. Super C from the Reason Party, 30.1%. Let me just turn my music down a little bit. There we go.
Interesting result. But Vibe did a lot during the term compared to everybody else in his party. I could see that being
Yes,
legitimate.
for sure. That was one of the races that we were looking out for, actually, as the polls had them pretty close for a little while there.
I think everybody there put up a really strong campaign, but unfortunately, Kaiser wasn't able to get started on the first day. He ran into some traffic that seems to have hurt him
For sure.
quite a bit.
I'm glad to see that the Quebecois people have confidence in my ability to serve as their MP as they did last election, and I hope I can serve them well.
Hopefully that seat doesn't go vacant again.
Alright, so that's it for the Eastern first past the post seats. So we have 2 for the Conservatives, 1 for the LDA, 0 for Reason, and 0 for the Peace and Order Party so far. So next we're moving on to Northern Ontario.
Are we not doing the list?
We'll do that at the very end.
Okay.
So next we're moving on to Northern Ontario. We have the winner. Who are our candidates here? We had Red Wolf 177, Thomas Cochrane Boy from Reason, and then A75 from the Peace and Order Party. So this one was another interesting one, as Red Wolf started off with a really strong lead, which then sort of drifted down a little bit. I'm not sure if that was as much because Red Wolf's campaign was poor, but more because Ace and Thomas brought some pretty strong stuff to the table here, especially towards the end. So of course the winner of the riding is Red Wolf with 42.8% of the vote, followed up by Ace with 31.3% and Thomas with 25.9%.
Seems Ace Ace was the one who beat the polls in this case.
Yes, for sure.
Definitely closer than I was expecting. I know Red Wolf was a strong advocate for this riding and the people in it during the term.
It's a very interesting campaign.
I guess the name recognition helped him in this case.
Yes. So we're moving through this really quickly, so we're going to keep going, just because I don't want to drag this out too long. So we'll move on to Toronto. Now, Toronto was a really interesting riding, because we had Vanilla Donut start off with a very strong campaign, high up in the polls. PM Chrétien won the by-election for this riding recently. I think it would have been a year ago or so.
Something like that.
Yeah. And we saw throughout the campaign PM Chrétien slowly catching up to Vanilla Donut. Vanilla Donut dropping in the polls. Valiant was sort of hanging around in the same range. Now he's been left behind a little bit. So let's see how that translates into the votes. So the winner of this riding is Vanilla Donut with 40.4% of the vote, and PM Chrétien with 36.3% of the vote. It's extremely close riding, especially considering how high Vanilla Donut started in the polls here.
A lot closer than it looked about a week ago, that's for sure.
Yes.
Just wasn't quite enough, I guess.
I guess not, but it's impressive for the CPC that they managed to catch up that fast in just a week's time. Alright. So we'll move on to Erie, where we have...
This is my own riding.
Yes,
This should be
John's here.
interesting to see.
So Dyslexic Alex, who's in this riding as well. Both put on very strong campaigns. I was impressed from both, for sure, watching their campaigns. So the final result is as follows. Dominion of Canada wins the riding with 57.7% of the vote, that is 1.6 million votes. Dyslexic Alex follows with 42.3%.
I'm very grateful to the people of Erie for choosing to re-elect me to fight for their interests, as I have been shown to do this term.
Awesome. It's good riding, very close. I mean, considerably close, I suppose. There's only 2 candidates, so that was interesting for sure.
Prairies and Territories is coming up soon, isn't it? That's a
It's
riding
next
that many people are going to be taking a look at and very anxious about.
So we've seen a lot of predictions for this election, and most of them seem to depend on the Prairies and Territories, saying that if the LDA won that riding, then they would form a minority, and if the CPC won it, they might form a majority or a minority. Interestingly, this was a campaign that the Conservatives spent a lot of time pouring money into, which definitely translated helping them catch up and keep up in the polls, considering Das Puma's campaign seemed to be a little bit lackluster compared to some of the other CPC campaigns.
I would have to disagree with you there.
Fair enough. However, the end result is a little bit unexpected. So the winner of the riding is A Broken Hero, with less than 1% above Das Puma. So very close riding. The last 2 days of the campaign really helped this, and really contributed to this unexpected result. Many people believe that the Reason Party couldn't win a riding, a first past the post riding. However, it seems that they have proved them wrong. Now we'll see if this translates into any sort of final results. I don't think it will. I don't think this means anything in terms of the final results, but we'll see what happens.
I think Puma should call for a recount in that riding with how close that one is.
I
About less than 1%.
That makes sense to me. When it's that close, I think a recount is always important to take care of. So where are we at now? We have the Conservatives on 3, the LDA on 3, and the Reason Party on 1. And we have Vibe dying.
Are you okay, Vibe?
Oh yeah,
Can't
sorry,
take
just
the pressure.
a bit of coughing.
Alright, so
Allergies are acting a bit.
no problem. We'll move on to
As long as it's just some coughing and not a gun misfire.
Not again. Okay, so we're gonna
I
move
see
on
the
to
subtle jabs at our prime minister.
Alberta. Again, trying to race through this results here. Don't want to keep you guys here too long. Now, Alberta was also an interesting riding because it started off really close. There's about 4% difference. And then we had Venom Big Boss take the lead in the polls quite a bit. To about... it was quite a bit of...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Aiden. I've got breaking news. Das Puma is asking for a recount officially, asking Elections Canada to do a recount.
I'm sure that will happen immediately following the final results. Just give it a moment here. Alright, so we'll move on to Alberta. Now, we have Venom Big Boss from the Conservatives, and Ipuna Korka Emma from the LDA. So the winner is Venom Big Boss with 53.4%. Emma managed to get up to 46%, down from 43, I think, was her lowest point during the campaign. Very impressive stuff from both candidates. However, it looks like Emma is first on the LDA's Western list. So, provided that the LDA can get a Western list seat, Emma will still be elected. Alright.
Hi, Aiden. Quick question.
Yes.
So, do you know when the CBC will be projecting who will form government, if at all?
Should be immediately after the first past the post results. We only have one left to go.
Well, oh
I
boy.
s-
Alright. So, the next result is from British Columbia, the final result for the evening from first past the post. We had the Prime Minister, Smith, from the Conservatives, Polaris from Orange Coon from the LDA, and then Samantha from Reason Party. So the final result was the winner of this riding is Smith with 39.4% of the vote, and then Orange with 34.9%, and then Samantha with 25.7%.
Wow, that's smaller. That's smaller than the polls seem to show.
It is.
Well, we saw last election Smith came pretty close to losing this one, but that's okay. His strong and stable campaign seems to have saved him in this riding.
We know that also BC is a typically non-conservative riding, especially around the more urban areas. So winning this riding is definitely a challenge, but Smith has managed to pull it off twice now. Alright, so we're going to move on to take a look at what our map looks like. Conservatives have 5 seats at this point. The LDA has 3, and the Reason Party has 1. What do you guys make of this?
Well, the Prairie's result is pretty unfortunate, I see. We're about one down from what we were hoping for first past the post wise, but the list seats might be able to help us here. We'll see what happens going forward.
For sure.
I feel like that the list seats will propel the LDA forward compared to where we are right now because the LDA performed consistently well in terms of keeping the margins of victory small for the CPC where they won, and for Reason and the Prairies. I feel like Canadians have enough confidence in us to have sent us a roughly equal, if slightly less, amount of list seats.
Yes, but the list also comprised of other candidates doing their own campaigns. So we've seen in the West and the East especially, we've had some pretty strong conservative list campaigns going on, so that might be able to help us regardless of the first past the post margins.
Yes. So what do you
I'll
guys
tell you
think?
what it is I'm seeing here. Sorry to interrupt there,
No
but
worries.
what it is I'm seeing is that we're almost seeing like a leftist surge. We're seeing a little bit of a resurgence and a bit more confidence coming back into the left side of the spectrum in Canada.
We've only really lost one seat from that we didn't have last election, because remember we won Toronto in a by-election, so those 3 seats in that area there, we didn't hold those in the first place.
That is true, but what I'm referring to more is the coordination between the parties of the LDA. We're seeing a lot more focus and attention on trying to beat the CPC as opposed to trying to kind of outbrinkmanship each other.
Yes, well, let's see how long that agenda lasts. I'd say we should
Yeah,
get to the list
you got a
seats
point there.
now.
Alright. Move on to we have a little graph here showing the seat totals for first past the post. Conservatives have the majority of seats. Move on to the overall votes so far. The Conservatives have 42.9% of the votes nationally. The Liberal Democratic Alliance has 35.8%. Reason Party has 15.2%, and then the Peace and Order Party has 6.1%. What do you guys make of this?
Interesting.
Is this expected, unexpected?
Seems to be better than the final poll that we saw. We seem to be outperforming by a couple of percent at least, which is it's good and heartening. It seems that there's a left-wing split going on between the Reason and the LDA, taking them down further.
Definitely. I think the Reason Party is managing to take some votes from both major parties, actually. But
I do feel like the Liberal alliance with the New Democrats may have alienated some voters who are now flocking to the Reason Party. However, I do believe that it was still in the best interest of the country in order to prevent the full extent of conservative damage to this country.
I think people like their income tax cuts and their small business tax cuts. I say as I sip my beer.
Okay.
You know what people like more than that? They like jobs.
Which we gave them very much so during the term.
Alright, this is getting a little out of hand now.
I'll fight you, Vibe. I'll meet you out back.
Okay. This is not appropriate for a CBC stream. I'm gonna have to ask you guys to stop.
Center block at 9 p.m.
Alright, let's move on. Alright, so we have a projection coming in. The official CBC projection here is that it will be a hung parliament, with the Conservative Party winning the most seats. What do you guys make of that?
Boo.
I feel like that's not an unfair projection.
I feel like it's something that a lot of people would have predicted at this point. Now I guess we'll have to see how many seats each party manages to win in the list. Our first list on the agenda here is the Eastern list, which has a total of 5 seats. By far our most important list. So we started the campaign with the LDA heavily outpolling the CPC here. We had the LDA on around 60% prior to the election. CPC was on around 30, 35. So I wonder how this would have translated into results. We have 2 Eastern list seats for the CPC, 2 for the LDA, and then 1 for the Reason Party. Puts us at 7 for the Conservatives, 5 for the LDA, and 2 for the Reason Party. What do you guys make of that? Thoughts on this?
Well, considering all the rhetoric about from the LDA about Quebec, that seems pretty interesting that we're able to hold 2 seats in the region here.
I feel like that largely comes from the conservative victory in the Atlantic, as well as the last-minute dropout due to unfortunate illness of the LDA candidate in Montreal.
Was very unfortunate. Alright, let's move on to the Ontario list. So the Ontario list has 4 seats to give out. So we have 1 for the CPC, 2 for the LDA, and 1 for the Peace and Order Party. So that puts us as 8, 7, 2, and 1. What What do you guys think of that?
That's exactly my projection. I could
There you go.
see that. Actually, no, it's not. I was expecting the Reason Party to get at least one here. Interesting. Okay,
It's
a
interesting.
little bit unexpected.
I know a couple people predicted that each party would get one.
Our list
here.
campaign was fairly lackluster here. We only had one person doing anything, and some of his campaign was a bit memey at first until he fixed it.
For sure. Well, it definitely seems to have translated into seats here without one seat for you, 2 for the LDA. And we'll just quickly move on to the Western list, our second last list here. So 2 for the Conservatives and 2 for the LDA in this region here. So puts us as 10, 9, 2, and 1. There are 3 seats left. What do you guys think of that?
I have my thoughts. I'll keep them to myself for now.
Alright. Okay. One more region to go, our national leveling seats. These are just meant to level out the proportionality a little bit, make everything make a little bit more sense. That's exactly what they've done here, giving 3 seats, 1 for the CPC, 1 for the LDA, and 1 for the Reason Party. That's it. Brings us to a total of 11 for the Conservatives, 10 for the LDA, 3 for the Reason Party, 1 for the Peace and Order Party. Definitely an unexpected result from what some people were hoping for. The LDA seems to have outperformed here a little bit.
I'd like to shout out my good friend Partiza.
Yes, me as well. Partiza is a great person. That's all. Alright, we'll move on to overall seat totals. Take a look at that. So we can see if we flash back to our original seat total or vote totals here. We can see that it's fairly proportional, which is the ideal. And then I also want to take a look at some of the, just a couple of the key regions here. Prairies and Territories was, as we mentioned, a really interesting riding. We didn't expect the Reason Party to win here, but it seems like a desire for change sort of swept up this riding. And I think the campaigns were a little bit slow for all 3 here, but it definitely translated to an interesting result. Eastern seats versus the vote share. So we mentioned earlier that the Conservatives started in the East with around 35% of the vote, or of the polls, sorry. But they ended up with 4 out of 8 of the seats in the East total, 52.4% of the vote. What do you guys think of that, the turn in the East? Do you think there was any sort of reason for that?
People saw through the nonsense.
I mean, it's one way to put it. Alright, I think that wraps up everything for tonight. That's our whole stream. I'd like to thank Valiant for making the graphics at the bottom here. And thank you, Dom, Vibe, and Aurora for joining me.
Thank you for hosting.
Yes, thank you for having us, and I'd also like to give a shout out to Valiant for the great job with the graphics we've got here.
Yes, perfect. Look great. Alright, thank you very much. Have a great night.